everyone, today I wanted to go through my best reads of 2021. I've got them all piled up here ready to go through and a list of the ebooks that I read as well. They aren't necessarily new releases, there's a mixture of newer books and older books. I just went through my Goodreads and picked out the 5-star reads from this year, so there's a real mix of genres here and there's bound to be something that you might enjoy for the new year. And as always, let me know in the comments if you've got a book recommendation for me. But before I get into it, I wanted to just mention that if you look on my channel, you might notice that there isn't a December wrap-up, and that's because I haven't finished a book in December. I've just been making my way through one book when I've had a moment and when I feel like it. Basically, it's just been really busy with all the Christmas stuff. I also released a book earlier in the month. It's just been really busy, but nicely busy. So I haven't been in the mood and I haven't had the time. So yeah, no December reads for this year. But the book that I've been reading, I will probably finish at the start of January and I'll include it then. So there's that. And of course I wanted to mention as well that there are lots of cards up. It was one of my children's birthdays just before Christmas. My daughter was 9. So yeah, she had a lovely day. And actually that's a good segue into the first book that I want to talk about today because it's one of hers. These books aren't in the order that I read them. They're just pretty much in the order of size because I've stacked them that way when I took the thumbnail. So there we go. Yeah, so The Story of Tracey Beaker is one of her books. She is wild about Jacqueline Wilson. She's really got into her this year. And Tracey Beaker is her favourite or one of her favourites. And she's been watching the old TV series as well as reading the books. And recently we sat down and watched My Mum Tracey Beaker together. And I thought, you know what, I fancy rereading because she talks about Tracey Beaker and Jacqueline Wilson all the time. So I picked this one up again. I'd last read it when I was a kid and I just loved it. It's the main reason why I gave this 5 stars is just how well crafted it is, because for a child it's got lots of funny moments and the characters are brilliant and it's just very well aimed at that audience. But at the same time, as an adult, there's lots of poignant little moments as well where you think, wow, that character has acted that way because of this thing. And it might be something that a younger reader wouldn't pick up on and they more just enjoy the story. I love books like that and I just think it's so cleverly done because it's got so much depth to it. And yeah, and I also love it's left pretty open, which I guess is why the series have carried on. And I have no idea whether Jacqueline Wilson intended this to be a standalone or always planned the sequels, but just as a standalone, this is such a thought-provoking read for an adult as well as an enjoyable book for a child. So I really enjoyed this and it brought back a lot of memories of reading it in the first place. And of course, I love the kind of subject matter that Jacqueline Wilson writes about and the fact that there aren't enough books written about children in care or children in all sorts of complicated circumstances, and that's just one of the brilliant reasons why Tracey Beaker is a great book. So I really enjoyed reliving that one. So the second brilliant book that I wanted to tell you about is The Wild Silence by Raynor Winn. Now I read her first book, The Salt Path, last year I believe, and it was a 5-star read for me as well. So as soon as this one was announced, I had this on pre-order and I just love this. Her writing style is beautiful. She really captures the feel of the Southwest, or how I feel about the Southwest from when I used to live there, the Southwest of England. It's the sort of ruggedness and the weather and the people, and it's just amazing. So The Wild Silence covers her life after the Salt Path, so after she'd walked the coastal path that runs around Devon and Cornwall. And it's brilliant because so in the Salt Path, her and her husband Moth had found themselves homeless. Moth had a terminal illness, which obviously these circumstances continue. So it's about them finding their place again and navigating life after the Salt Path. And it covers her experience of publishing the Salt Path as well, and the excitement and everything around that. So as a writer as well, I just loved it. So this is a brilliant book. Yeah, again, very good. Of course, they're all going to be good because they're my 5-star reads. So then the next book on my list is Chris Hadfield's An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. And I've been dying to read this for a really long time, so I was thrilled to pick this up. I am a big fan of Chris Hadfield's work. I watched his YouTube videos. His music video to A Space Oddity is just amazing. I'll leave it below in case that one passed you by, but him singing and playing guitar on the space station is just like one of my favourite things. And I used to use his little YouTube videos at the end of lessons when I was a science teacher. So you know that kind of 3 or 4 minutes at the end when you're waiting for the bell to go because the kids got ready really quickly, and I would put on one of his little space videos. So yeah, I was a fan, and so I was looking forward to reading this, and I just loved it because it gave such an insight into what it's like to be an astronaut, which is something that obviously very few people get to experience. And the kind of mindset and also the camaraderie was fascinating. I think there are really good life lessons in here, but also it was just fascinating. I love the way that he views the world and life, and it's kind of, in a sense, a bit of a self-help guide. But if you're a science fan and you want something that's kind of uplifting, and then yeah, I really recommend this. I really, really loved this. Interestingly, I passed it on to my husband because I was like, you've got to read this. I love this. And he enjoyed it, but didn't rave about it like I did. So it's one of those things. Everyone has different taste, but that one was a real big book for me this year. Then the next book that I read, or the next best read in my pile of books here, is When Breastfeeding Sucks by Zainab Yate. Again, one that I'd wanted to read for a while, although this was released relatively recently, 2020, so I just hadn't got round to reading it till this year. And Zainab Yate is pretty much the expert on breastfeeding aversion, which is something that just doesn't really get much publicity, I guess, and it was something I experienced with all 3 of my children. When I had my eldest, I didn't know what it was, I'd never heard of it, and then Zainab Yate kind of appeared on social media, and suddenly I knew that there was a name for this thing, and that, you know, it could be, there were things that you could do that could help. So basically, breastfeeding aversion is when, often later down the line with feeding a baby, it starts to feel like fingernails down a blackboard. Like you don't want to be there as you're feeding. You're just like, oh, it's not painful. It's more of an emotional response. And it's horrid because you feel like a terrible person. So when Zainab brought out a whole book about it, obviously with my interest in early parenting stuff, I've been wanting to read this. So it's very, very good. It's very interesting. It talks about a lot of kind of psychology. There isn't really much information or research out there about this stuff. So a lot of this is Zainab has done kind of surveys and looked at lots of different pieces of research and tried to put everything together. Kind of, I suppose, like action research kind of thing. She runs a Facebook support group, loads of stuff going on there. So yeah, it's lots of ideas about where perhaps aversion comes from, and then things that are helpful as well. So very good, very interesting for me with the breastfeeding stuff that I do, and you know, yeah, loved it. So if that's something that you experience or know somebody who experiences or any of that, it's a good book to point people in the direction of. It's very, very good. Now the next book on my stack is Earthed by Rebecca Schiller. My mum bought this for me for my birthday. She pre-ordered this along with The Wild Silence because they both came out around that time. Now, I had been really wanting to read Earthed for a while. I was aware of Rebecca Schiller from her work running birth rights, and she's written a few books around birth and that kind of stuff. So I already followed her on Instagram. And when she started to talk about this book, I was really excited to read this. So Earthed is her story of going and buying a small holding, moving with her family in the countryside quite near me in Kent. And basically her life as a writer and all the stuff that she did was quite chaotic. And she was hoping that moving to the countryside and living this kind of peaceful, simple life would calm things down. And as it happened, it all got a whole lot worse. And this book is just, it's so beautifully written. I love her writing style. It's very artistic, and the way that she reflects on herself and discusses her whole experience of this is just, it kind of weaves her mental health and well-being, her family's experience and everything into the actual, like, the plants growing, and it's so beautiful. So if you're interested in kind of nature, simple life farming kind of stuff, but also mental health and all of that, it's just, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give spoilers. This book is really powerful, really interesting. It's just, her writing is lovely. This was a real massive favourite this year as well. One of the things I love too is that the cover is actually painted using pigments from her own farm, and there's a little key in the back where she shows what plants were used to make all those pigments. So I absolutely love this book, and obviously, like all the others, I really recommend. Next on my pile is another breastfeeding book. This is Mixed Up by Lucy Ruddle. Now, I had followed Lucy on Instagram for a while. She's got a really interesting Instagram if you're interested in breastfeeding. And so, yeah, I've been enjoying the stuff she put out. And when she said she was releasing this, I was very excited. Now, Mixed Up is a little bit like with Zainab Yates' book, or Zainab Yates' book. I keep putting an S on the end of her name, the When Breastfeeding Sucks. They are really the only books of their kind. So Mixed Up is a book about combination feeding. So combination feeding by choice or necessity. And I think a lot of parents who combination feed, so as in give breast milk and formula milk, find that there isn't a lot of information about doing that and putting the two things together, and yet that's a really common way of feeding babies. And I think that it can be common for health professionals to find it difficult to give information about formula, because obviously breastfeeding has lots of benefits and all of that, and I think it just becomes a really difficult path to navigate, and therefore for the parents who are combination feeding either because they want to or they have to, there's not a whole lot of information out there about how to go about doing it, how to balance it and what could work and what to try and all that stuff. So I have a funny feeling I was sent this for a review, but I can't remember, I might have bought it. But it is very, very, very good. So if you know somebody who's in this, having this experience, or equally if you are, this is a really, really good kind of practical and just well explained, well evidenced guide to combi feeding. Next up is Peri-Menopause Power by Maisie Hill. Now, I follow Maisie Hill on Instagram as well. I'll link all these accounts and books and all the things below. Maisie Hill wrote the book Period Power, which I haven't read, but I would like to. Now, I specifically picked up this book because I was interested in the perimenopause. The perimenopause is the period of time, no pun intended, leading up to the menopause. So the menopause being specifically the moment when periods are finished. So the menopause is like a day, you know, it's a moment in time. The perimenopause is like the phase leading up to it, if you haven't heard the term before. And I was interested in this because I was having some issues with my hormones, which all seems to be fine, but I wondered if it was the start of an early perimenopause, because I'm 37, so it would be early, but it's not, you know, impossible that that could be the case. So I wanted to read some more about it and get some information, and even if it wasn't the case, which it wasn't, that I could still kind of get tooled up for when the perimenopause hits. So it seemed good to like read ahead, find out some more. And it's a really interesting book. It goes through the science of what's going on, which, I mean, although my degree is in marine biology, I'm very interested in female reproduction and early parenting and pregnancy and breastfeeding and all that stuff too. So that's science stuff, it's good stuff. And then it goes through kind of what happens, why it happens, and lots of tools for how you can manage things and different routes that you would like to take. So yeah, really, really good. Loads of good information in here. Definitely something that I'm glad is on my bookcase. I would still like to read Period Power. But yeah, really good. If you are or know someone who is experiencing the perimenopause, definitely worth a read. Then next is Let's Talk About Feeding Your Baby. I have a funny feeling this was a review copy that I was sent. I love Amy Brown. I've read all of her books, I believe, or nearly all of them. In fact, she's got a new one out that I have not read. Let's Talk About Feeding Your Baby goes through breastfeeding, formula feeding, and weaning onto solids. I'm pretty sure that this was a review copy that I was sent. And it's a really great book for kind of an overview of just everything you need to know about feeding a baby. Like, does what it says on the tin. It's really good. As you'd expect, it's full of evidence-based information. Amy Brown is a professor in breastfeeding stuff, so she knows what she's talking about, and she knows what's the current thinking and why. So yeah, basically, if you've got a baby and you want to feed it, there's good information in here. Good review. This is why they send you review copies. You're really good at putting words together. But, you know, seriously, one of the things that's nice is it's got inside this kind of yellow colour theme, I don't know. And the yellow bits, which are easily seen on the pages, are bits like spotlight on breastfeeding support, or basically little expert sections. So she's got lots of contributions from other people. So who's this? Joanna Sargent, IBCLC and founder of Milk and Motherhood. Or let's find another one. Who's this? Donating Your Milk by Dr. Natalie Schenker. So she's had contributions from lots of other experts as well. So it's just got pretty much everything that you need to know, and is a really good practical guide, but backed up by why this is the best information that we have right now. Very good, really liked it. Next is Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, which I read with my daughter. If I read her bedtime stories, depending on what they are, some of them are, you know, if they're just like a picture book, I don't tend to include them on my Goodreads, but the heftier ones I do. So Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, we've been reading for a while, and this is just such a lovely book. It has every double page spread is, sorry if you can hear squeaking, there's a plant squeaking on the window. The weather's awful out there. So it has a double page spread for a particular woman and explains what they did. Each piece of art is an illustration by a different artist. So there's lots of different art styles, which I love too. And it's alphabetized. It has people from all different times and do different things. So the Mirabelle sisters are activists. Who else have we got? Maya Gibera, who's a surfer. It's just lots of different people who've basically made a difference with what they do. Very inspiring. My daughter is very interested in people and stories about people. It's the same one of my kids that read Tracey Beaker. And basically, my son reads by himself and my youngest daughter is reading picture books. So hence why there's a couple of books from the middle child who I'm reading longer books with. So yeah, it's kind of, it's her kind of thing. If you've got a child that's really into learning about people and what people have done and learning about different walks of life and stuff, it's great. It's really inspiring. It's age appropriate. So where some of these people may have things that have happened in their life that you might not want to go into, it's glossed over. It's just a snapshot of what they're known for, what they've done. It's lovely. It's really well written. And you can we literally read a couple a night for months, but you can just dip in and out and just read one. We've used it for homework a couple of times when it's been relevant. So yeah, really good. There's also Goodnight Stories for Rebel Boys, and I have a feeling there's some others. I can't remember, but it's good. And we've got the boys one as well, and that's good too. Then this one, which is heavy, which I read recently, the travel book. I really enjoyed this. It's massive. It's a really good coffee table book if you've got a big coffee table. This was something we picked up to kind of for the kids a little bit. I mean, I love looking at travel, but we thought this would be helpful for homework or for them to flick through and learn about different countries. There was a book swap in the village, and that was where we picked it up. And they pull this out and they look up different places and go, wow, I'd love to see that, and why is that, you know, why is this country so icy, or why is it, you know, they just like asking questions. And for each country it has little things like best time to visit, top things to see, top things to do, getting under the skin, which is like culture, like things to read, things to watch, a word in whatever language they speak in the country, trademarks, which I think is sort of things the country's known for, and a random fact. And then just beautiful pictures. So it's alphabetized and it's, yeah, just really interesting. I read it cover to cover because I'm like that, but really it's better to dip in and out of. And this just lives by our chair here, and the kids just pull it out and flick through it, and it's great. It's good for them to learn about the world and just pick up random facts, and handy for homework too. Then I'm going to refer to my post-it note for the ebooks that I've read this month. So I'll put the pictures up here. The first one on my list is the Lido. I can't think who this is by, and I did not write it down. Yes, I can. Libby Page. This is a women's fiction, which normally that wouldn't be a genre that would make it into my best reads. I enjoy reading women's fiction sometimes, but generally they're not books that really inspire me or really kind of get under my skin. The Lido was just a lovely book, and also had lots of elements that I like to read about. So it had the Lido itself and lots of sections about swimming in cold water, which I mostly enjoy, and just the love of swimming, and a lot about the community. Community is something that I really, really love, and the idea of all these people working together to stop the Lido from being closed because it was such an important resource for the community. That whole concept I just absolutely loved. But also the friendship between two people of different generations I enjoy too, because I think often you get friendships of people in the same phase of life, and I have lots of friendships with people of different ages and different walks of life, and so I enjoy books that celebrate that. So I just really liked it. It's a feel-good, easily read book about people trying to stop a Lido from being closed, and I liked it. It was kind of predictable in parts, but nicely so. It was well done. I would definitely read another Libby Page book. I really liked it. And the next one up is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Now this was a book club read, and I didn't read it on ebook. I bought it, but I don't believe I have it anymore, which I couldn't find it, so that tells you something. But I did really enjoy this. It's about a woman who, trigger warning, so Matt Haig writes about mental health, and this is kind of one of the, I suppose, deepest, I believe. The Midnight Library is about a woman who is, trigger warning, who has attempted to take her own life because things have got really, really bad. And she goes into this midnight library, which is like an imaginary library, and each book is a different version of her life. And this really appeals to me because I'm somebody who can reflect on things and think, if that hadn't have gone like that, or if you'd have done that differently, how would things have turned out? Would things be better? And often I think the answer to that is that things would just be different, and things you might think, oh, if I hadn't have done that, everything would be so much better. But actually, things might have ended up a lot worse. So I find that whole concept really interesting, the kind of sliding doors, or like, I don't know, just the different alternate universe versions of ourselves. And I do really, really find that concept fascinating. So that was why this book appealed to me so, so much. It's a really easy read. It's not very long. The chapters, one of the things with Matt Haig is chapters are very short, which means you can just sit down and read a bit of it. It's not a big investment to, if you've got 5 minutes, you can just sit and read a chapter. And I really loved it. I really, really did. As a book club, I think it wasn't one of our favourites, but I really liked it. Next up is #Savvy Business Owner by Savy Leiser. I think that's how you say her surname, but I wouldn't swear to it. Savy is a fellow author tuber. She has a company where she writes books about rescue dogs. I have a rescue dog, so that sounds wonderful. And she also makes a lot of content that's anti-MLM, which is very interesting. And Savy brought this book out earlier in the year, I think. And I was going through a phase of reading some business things, so this really appealed. And it's an excellent book for a small business owner that explains the things that you need to do and how to go about doing them. And it's not the kind of book that's, you're going to make not five figures, that wouldn't be very many figures, millions, let's just say millions. You're going to bring your product out, you'll be a millionaire, your life will change, everything will be wonderful. I hate those kind of books. It's just, you want to start a business, this is how you do it. You need to raise some capital, here are some ideas. You need to buy, invest in some products, you need to do some research. These are the things that help me. You need to have, it's just good. It's no nonsense, practical, but not like pie in the sky kind of stuff. So yeah, very good. If you're going to start a small business, I would recommend. And as I say, also check out her YouTube and all of that, and I will link all those things below too. Next up was another book club read. This is The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and the name of the author escapes me right at this moment, but I will put it somewhere. The reason being I read this earlier in the year, I think possibly in January. And this must have been the favourite book. We haven't gone through and seen our favourite book in the book club that I'm in, but I reckon it was probably this. We all just loved it. And this book follows a man and his wife as they flee the situation in Aleppo. So it jumps back and forth between them living in the UK and navigating the system, having arrived. And so you know they're going to get to the UK. But then it jumps back in time from before they were forced to leave, and seeing the situation escalate and how other people are kind of navigating that experience. And also there are lots of other characters that they come across who show other experiences of being a refugee, and it's very thought-provoking. It's beautifully written, very cleverly written as well. I mean, it's just it's amazing. And I mean, I live on the southeast Kent coast. People becoming refugees and having to flee and come on tiny boats is very much something that I'm aware of. You know, we literally are right where it's happening, where people are arriving in the UK. So it's something that I am very aware of. And so to read something that could give me more of an insight, I guess, to learn something, but also to read something so beautiful. It was really moving and well written, and yeah, great. Really, really, I mean, I always feel like when you say it's a great, I mean, it's a good book, but obviously it's not, you know, it's not a nice thing, but really, yeah, really thought-provoking and beautiful. Loved it. So the last book that I wanted to talk about, I actually read this just before The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and that Don't Tell Me You're Afraid, and I forget the name of the author, but I'll put the cover up here. Don't Tell Me You're Afraid. I actually read this in paperback as well and didn't keep it, just because I didn't think I would read it again, but it was still, same as with The Midnight Library, it was still, I really enjoyed it, I just didn't think it was a rereader. Sometimes a book can be a 5-star read that you probably won't pick up again. Anyway, this follows the true story of a Somalian refugee who she wants to become a runner, and it follows her sort of in her childhood, and as she wants to become an athlete and then becomes an athlete, and trying to train in the difficult circumstances that are there. And she ultimately ends up getting onto the Olympic team. And so a lot of the book follows her training and her trying to be an athlete, whilst things like having to wear a hijab or not being allowed to train, and the circumstances that her family are experiencing, and that kind of thing. And then eventually she makes the decision to flee, and it then follows that experience. And it's very, very moving. I would say not as well written as The Beekeeper of Aleppo, but because it's a true story. Now, The Beekeeper of Aleppo is based on people's true stories, but is a fictionalised version. But you can tell these are real experiences in that book. With Don't Tell Me You're Afraid, this is, you know, an account of something that really happened. And I think that although the writing isn't as like literary, I guess, it's very, very moving because it's real. So yeah, I love that one too. Living Where I Do, it's something that's very kind of prominent. So yeah, I found both of those really thought-provoking and moving. So yeah, there's a whole range there, from books about business, books about mental health, true stories, non-fiction, yeah, lots of stuff. So hopefully there's something in there that you might be interested in reading. I am going to stop because it is getting dark out there and it's only 3:30. But yeah, I'm losing the light. Anyway, yeah, please do leave me in the comments any books that you have absolutely loved this year and think that I should give a read. Don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this video, and please subscribe for more videos like this one. I'll see you in the new year.